Hi, everyone. Good evening and goedenavond and welcome. This is the June webinar held by KNVTS Amsterdam. This is our 9th so far. My name is Mariana Candela and I'll be your host tonight. And tonight we'll bring to you Danielle Doggett. I hope I didn't butcher on her last name. She's coming straight from Costa Rica. Danielle is the CEO of SAILCARGO, a company that wants to prove the value of clean shipping. They are now building their flagship, Ceiba, which she'll talk about. Danielle grew up in Canada and was introduced to the wonders of sails shipping while crewing the Tres Hombres. She was named by the Royal Institute of Naval Architects as one of the most influential women in the industry. But now, without further ado, I'll give you Danielle Doggett.
Hi, goedenavond. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I guess I'll just jump right into the presentation. Okay, and great. Is that working okay? Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So this presentation is on behalf of SailCargo Inc. and specifically talks about our flagship, Ceiba. So there will be two parts to this presentation. One will be technical shipbuilding details of our wooden ship, and one will be looking forward into the future of what we hope to achieve with SailCargo Inc. So just to give a little bit of context, these are some of the topics I'll be covering. And just a small note, as these slides will be made available later and rather offline, there's quite a bit of text on some of them. I won't read everything, but in case somebody wants to reference that later, they'll have access to that text on those slides. This is a rendering of Ceiba right there, which is provided by Pepijn van Schaak, who is Manta Marine Design, who is originally from the Netherlands. So just to reference the abstract of this presentation, which is what we've written for this, is, I will read this. Developing a resilient, decarbonized transportation sector is a critical task of the Anthropocene, which is this time which has been created by man or human population. With reason, the mission of SailCargo Inc. is to prove the value of clean shipping. This mission is increasingly relevant due to the global focus on resilience during these heightened times. There are growing worries that, like a ship such as the Ever Given, which is too big to steer, supply chains have become a source of vulnerability. That's from The Economist in April of this year. The pillars of our company are to operate in a financially and environmentally sustainable manner with respect for our global community members. So I've already been introduced, so I won't read through that. But if you're interested, you can reference this slide, which is just introducing myself. This photo actually here is on board the Tres Hombres. I believe it was 2010, a photo by Klaas Wiersma, and this was the cover of Zeilen magazine back then. And just to underline that everything I do or I'm referencing here is in collaboration with my two co-founders, Lynx and John. And for the past 5 years, we've been doing everything together, including Ceiba, Pitaya, our nonprofit shipyard association, and the development of SailCargo Inc. And Lynx grew up in Quebec, where he learned fine joinery, and he is our technical director. So he is in charge of the complete construction of our shipyard and of Ceiba. And John is our director of operations, and John is originally from Costa Rica. And really, we would not have been able to achieve anything without John. Neither Lynx nor I are originally business people, especially we are not business people from Costa Rica. And so John helps us navigate all of that with excellence. So just to introduce, why are we doing sailing cargo, or why is this something that we are pursuing? I think at this point in time, most of us are aware of what is the problem, but some of us are not aware of what is the extent of that impact. So oil spills, air pollution, these are things that most people are to some certain extent already aware of. But if you look at some of the other considerations here, we have accidents at sea, lost containers, shipbreaking, the mining where all the iron comes from, as well as bioacoustic pollution, which is underwater sound, which affects marine mammal communication, invasive species, waiting and delays, and more. So I won't dwell on this, but do not hesitate to ask me questions at the end if you'd like to learn more about this part. Our solution is starting with Ceiba, and we're trying to address as many of those problems as possible by using autonomous propulsion supported by clean energy, as well as having a more accessible price than what was formerly available in primarily European markets for clean shipping. And yeah, other aspects such as unparalleled marketing, stakeholder experience, independent loading and unloading, potentially tapping into carbon credits, and using regenerative construction materials, again, as opposed to something like iron ore mines. And here's just a little quote from a journalist named Jocelyn Timperley, who was with us for a few days at the shipyard, and she wrote this for the BBC. The greatest value in a project like SAILCARGO Inc. is its ability to raise awareness about shipping emissions and the lifestyle changes which are needed alongside technology to tackle them. And that article was the front page on their website of the BBC earlier this year. We've been working on this solution, Ceiba, for the past 890 days as of today. Rather, that's 890 days since the keel was laid. And here you see one of our young, very skilled and ambitious shipwrights, Ben, who is actually from Canada, faring on the inside of the port quarter of the frames there. These are double sawn frames. We'll get into some more details soon. Again, just another photo of Ceiba. This is relatively recent. And there are no people in this photo, but to give you a sense, I can walk under the keel with barely ducking or barely having to lower my head. So just to give you a sense of that. And this solution, Ceiba, is being constructed and carried out at our nonprofit shipyard association, Astillero Verde. And this shipyard is an iconic one located in the pristine Gulf of Nicoya in Costa Rica. So that's the bay you're seeing there, the Gulf of Nicoya. This shipyard has graced the pages of dozens of publications, captivating attention from around the globe. And actually in this photo, you can see under the green, long green roof is the ship itself, and you can just make out all the frames. And just for reference, that little square on top of the building is actually where I live. And what else can you see? Right almost in the center of the photo is a little tiny pink open boat, which is actually 5 meters. And that was built with us, with Bert van Baar, who is a Dutch boat builder that I'm sure some of you know. An interesting aspect about our shipyard is that it is located in one of the most financially vulnerable areas of Costa Rica, with few opportunities. By employing apprentices and professionals, including 2 women's associations, Astillero Verde provides income and essential skills. We offer free courses to the community and donate unused materials whenever possible. These are 2 aerial perspectives. They're not taken at exactly the same time, but again, you can see the long green roof in the left photo, and that is the ship. In the right photo, it has been turned vertical just to fit on the screen, and you'll see that those canvases have changed into different color ones. So those are periodically changing as we have rainy season or want to have access or need to replace one of the canvases. This shipyard is 1.4 hectares or approximately 3 acres. So just to get into some of the construction details of the vessel, again, this is a 3D rendering provided by Manta Marine Design, Pepine, who is our naval architect who is currently located in New Zealand. This rendering that we have here is more or less what has already been constructed or completed on the ship. There are a lot of other aspects, such as all of the weather deck beams, that are constructed but not installed. So what you see here is the installation. An exciting aspect which is not shown in this is that the Sampson's post was recently raised by hand using only block and tackle, which weighs probably 500 or 600 kilos and is one solid timber. The gray beams that you see are tween deck beams. So that's inside the cargo hold, and you can see two tween deck beam cargo hatches. So cargo would go in through those openings that you can see there. So here's just a few photos before I get into some very specific little details. This is a shipbuilder, Charlie from the UK, Charlie Haley, I believe. And yeah, he's been with us. He formerly worked on Tres Hombres and for Eco Clipper. And Agatha was a shipbuilding apprentice with us for a little while. She's amazing. She was staying up to the last minute putting in that Sampson's post. She's from Denmark. And from the left, we have Nico from France, Andrea from Italy, Ben from Canada, and Davis from Costa Rica working to clamp in a hot timber. That'll be, I believe that's right in the very stern again on port side, if I'm not mistaken. That's a hot plank that's just been steamed in. As you can see, they're all wearing gloves. So from left, we have Yamilet from Costa Rica, Eli from US and Canada, Asma is from Belgium, Nico in the back is from France, and then we have Pancho on the right who is from Nicaragua, and they are just taking that big timber out of the steam box again with hot gloves on, or leather gloves on for the heat. Just a really great photo from maybe almost a year ago. Just so you can really clearly see the double sawn frames and how they are put together, and the futtock pieces, or each individual piece, are lapped over. So each frame can be made up of up to 12 individual futtock pieces in total. So one little construction detail, because I promised them, we are looking here at cogs or coxes. There's all different names, and I have a definition on the following page, but if you just take a look, you can see what we have on the left is a unassembled frame, and there's a red cloth on what will be the forward facing side of that frame. So that red cloth would get removed and everything put into place and tarred and put down on top of that. And you can see those cogs or shear keys, which I'm going to explain, are set in or recessed in to each side. So the purpose of a cogs, or shear key is to improve the stability of a structure. It is designed and provided in various structures to provide resistance against lateral loads like earthquakes, not in our case, or sliding forces in various structures such as bridges. So shearing force is something like this, and that's what we are stopping with these. And why did we decide to put these in when there may or may not be traditional in frames? Well, it was really because of our keel. And this here is a photo of the keel section of it with rectangular shear keys. And you can see they would actually be able to pop those out of the ones where it's sticking up. Those are just dry fits set in. And on the other face of that joint, you can see that they are hollows or recesses where that would fit together. So if I can just read this part quickly. The keel of Ceiba is of 4 sections of solid Tamarindo del Monte, scarfed together into one long section. The completed length is 106 feet or 32 meters. This local tropical hardwood is the densest and most difficult wood to work with that any of our team members has ever experienced, including lignum vitae. And this would be more difficult, though it is less dense, due to the higher levels of silicates, which actually become more crystallized as it dries. So we really can only cut this wood when it's green. This wood is also volatile and prone to warping. So when we first started cutting this wood, we would have these very massive logs, 14 meters long or longer if we could, and at least a meter high or even a bit taller. And we would cut them freehand with the chainsaw to get them roughly square. And when you cut off the face or the rounded edge, eventually they would just spring open really aggressively, and it was to the point where it was very dangerous because someone could get pinned in between. So we had to chain all the chain all the logs up with just big chains holding it together so that we could actually cut it in a safe manner. This attitude remains in the final piece as well. So each piece basically ended up being not perfectly straight, even though it was cut straight. So to ensure, and this was not necessarily due to the fact that it was green wood. Other wood we cut green to this size timber stays straight. It's something about this wood that when you cut it, all of a sudden it just snaps kind of. It's really intense. So to ensure that the keel of the ship was straight, it was forcefully aligned. The team received expert advice from master shipwrights from around the world. I think we had advice from 6 or 7 master shipwrights from 6 or 7 different countries. The decision was made to join all 4 sections into a great continuous curve and then straighten the entire length. So we put each one in the direction it was supposed to be, and then it basically made this curve, and we had to forcefully straighten it, the whole length of it. This arduous task would put sideways shearing pressure on the scarf. So as we push here, these scarf joints are getting a type of pressure that they would not normally be designed to receive, something they are not intended to withstand. To ensure structural integrity, shear keys were added to every joint, which are shown in the photo. These keys or cokes were also of Tamarino del Monte and were bedded with tar. And they worked great, and to this day the keel is straight. So that was a really, we're really happy that that worked out. For Ceiba, the cokes used in all of the double saum frames are of local tropical hardwood called wapinol, also known as jatoba. And we just have a few more photos. So here we go, just some more photos of the keel work. And on the left we have Silas, who is a shipwright from Denmark, Luc van Winsberg from Netherlands, and Gero Jonas. And Luc and Gero are using the Alaskan chainsaw mill to cut that angle into to prepare the scarf joint. And Silas is guiding them on when to stop cutting. And that was a jig made specifically for this. And on the right, you can see that that's how they would be matched together. Okay. And just one more image there of the keel with the first 2 frames put up. So that would have been March 2019. So now I'm going to switch topics a little bit and looking towards more the future of sailing cargo and how SAILCARGO Inc. hopes to achieve the mission and prove the value of clean shipping. So just going into this second part, this is an excerpt from the abstract. We hope to cover the range of ways in which clean shipping is both efficient and a long-term investment opportunity that is tangibly expanding. The antithesis of the aging fleet of fossil fuel dependent vessels that are rapidly morphing into stranded assets. So now my job is to convince you of that. So something that I'm reading a book right now, it's over there and it's called Outside the Box, and it's a look at shipping. It was published last year, and something that I read recently that's quite interesting is the extent to which the shipping industry that we know today is subsidized and has been subsidized. And this can be a perceived barrier to access, is that clean shipping cannot compete and it is too expensive and fuel is so cheap and shipping is so established. But what a lot of people don't know or don't consider is how subsidized this industry truly is. And so that's something that should not be considered a barrier to access, but rather a way that can actually help clean shipping get ahead if we address those subsidies and see if we can shift them over into a more supportive infrastructure. So the economic implications of subsidized shipping went well beyond the cost to taxpayers. With the public sector bearing part of the expense of building and operating ships, the global merchant fleet expanded far more quickly than would have occurred without subsidies. This is talking about the fossil fuel or normal shipping industry. This contributed to overcapacity, and shipping rates fell low, and they barely covered their fuel bills. Thanks to subsidies for ship construction, shippers were able to pay less than the full cost of moving their goods by sea, and therefore could sell their exports for prices that did not reflect the true cost of transportation. And this is a question we ask quite a bit. What is the true cost of cheap shipping? So just thinking about that and seeing how we can use those same frameworks for clean shipping. One of the ways that is already happening is the IMO is targeting a 50% reduction in emissions by 2050, and they are encouraging administrations, port authorities, and other stakeholders to provide incentives. What this means for ship owners is that if they continue making the same kind of ship that does burn the same kind of fuel and does not have a 50% reduction in emissions, they have to think ahead now because their vessels last 20 years. If they do the same thing they're doing today, their investment is going to become a stranded asset because it will be penalized or taxed or have some sort of fines imposed, and so they would not even be able to resell these vessels if this IMO target is realized, which means they're forced to think of, well, how can we achieve that target? And that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're seeing already in our efforts here. So with SAILCARGO Inc., this is Marilyn. She is a trade and logistics professional. She's our in-house lead in that division. And we have letters of intent already signed for a significant amount of cargo. And this is representing that from the private sector, so not from shippers, but from producers or importers or distributors, they are recognizing that clean shipping is the way of the future. And so we have these signed letters of intent that support that. And indeed, Ceiba is already a full boat going northbound. So we have one letter of intent that actually would completely fill the whole ship, which is a huge success to be able to say that. And this particular partner, cargo partner, is also working within their network to completely fill Ceiba on all southbound voyages as well. This is a quote from that producer, Mr. Serge Picard, who represents Café William. And I won't read the entire thing, but basically it explains that as a very large coffee importing company, originally from Canada and working in the US, they have done everything they can to be as environmental as possible. But unfortunately, regardless of what they do on the sourcing side, what the farmer does to make the most ecological coffee, the biggest problem for Café William and for Serge is that they still must use the dirtiest forms of transportation in the world. The answer that they say they found is us, SAILCARGO Inc. And so by partnering with these large producers that actually support this work and say private sector supports this and wants to see it increase, this is really giving us a big push forward. So that's very exciting. Again, you can reference these slides later and download them. They will also be available on our website if you'd like to read through it in more detail. So we've already filled Ceiba on all northbound voyages, according to these signed letters of intent. And we have investors lining up. And this one letter of intent specifically, as well as others, would greatly overfill the vessel. This causes us to justify the announcement of a new ship, Pitaya. Pitaya means dragon fruit. And we have announced very recently to our shareholders that we are building a second ship of the Ceiba line. So it'll look almost essentially the exact same. And this will service specific routes for Café William and their partners. And this has been opened up quite recently to receive letters of intent to invest. This is a huge milestone for SAILCARGO Inc. because it is justifying the success that has already happened, or it is underlining the achievements we've already made. So Ceiba has not been launched, and yet she's already succeeded in that mission of proving the value of clean shipping. So if you'd like to learn more about that, please email us. There's our email at the bottom, invest@sailcargo.inc. And then just going into some other sort of broad spectrum things we're working on. This might seem a little out of left field, but we are also working on clean hydrogen fuel cells. And we have already conducted a study with Ad Astra Rocket Company, which is an affiliate of NASA, and they do clean hydrogen. There's our team there visiting with them. And we had the honor of meeting Dr. Franklin Chan, who is this astronaut in the photo. And we are actually working together on conducting a second study for a larger type of vessel. But what we're looking at with clean hydrogen is a very wide spectrum. So everything from as small as open fishing boats from our community all the way up to much larger commercial vessels, and they would have different technological applications. But this is something that SailCargo Inc. has been working on in the background and is very excited to have begun announcing. And so looking forward, this is a fun drawing one of our investors provided in response to a podcast I did, because I began speaking about how we want to do larger commercial vessels, and that they would be built of steel rather than regenerative materials such as wood, like Ceiba and Pitaya are made of. And I said, I acknowledge that it is imperfect, and we must do what we can to offset that, mitigate that, and move forward from using steel. And I said I would be happy to write imperfect in huge letters on the hull of the ship. And so this is just a imagined rendering or sketch from one of our investors. And then I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this. This is nothing new. This design has been out there for about 10 years or more. But just to underline that SailCargo Inc. is looking at exploring doing a vessel such as this. So I'm not claiming that we are building an eco-liner, but we are very inspired by this design, and we are in preliminary communication with Dijkstra. And this would be a vessel we hope to have clean hydrogen fuel cell as the auxiliary engine. So it's an electric motor with hydrogen fuel cells, potentially with an electrolyzer on board. We're very preliminary with this, but the cargo conversations we're having justify investigating this level of vessel. So if anybody's interested, please do not hesitate to reach out, and I'd love to share more information behind the scenes. So again, this is something maybe you want to download and look into. This is the corporate structure of what we are up to. So at the top, you can see SailCargo Inc., which is a for-profit top holding company, which we recently sort of re-registered in Panama just last month. And Astillero Verde is our nonprofit, which benefits from donations from all these other for-profit entities, some of which exist, some of which don't. But you can clearly see the breakdown of our plan here and how we hope to achieve with these goals with these different companies. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions at any point. And just closing out, that we have a strong commitment to doing research and following through with tree planting and offsetting all the trees we cut down. And so this is a recent capstone project done for the Yale School of the Environment by our in-house tree planting lead, Grace. You may request this report if you're interested. And as well, another recent report, which is available on our shareholder portal on the website, which is considering the different concepts being put out right now, one of which is the eco-liner. And so this is a comparative study that we've been looking into to help inform ourselves of what is available right now. Again, you may request this if you want. And that's it. Thank you. There's my contact information, and I hope to be able to answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks so much for your presentation. So interesting. We already have some questions coming in, but I'll put mine first. You gave the read, or not the reason, but the meaning of Pitaya. What is the meaning of Ceiba?
Ceiba is also known, it's a type of tree. It's also known as the kapok tree, and it is a Mayan spirit tree that connects this world with the next. And a fun fact, I guess you could say, is that life preservers or life jackets used to be stuffed with the silk made from the Ceiba tree.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so it's related. All right, so let's go through the audience questions now. Someone would say they are more important than mine. So first from Tamara, how does sailing prevent species from spreading?
So the invasive species referenced in that problem slide are to ballast water. So large tankers or vessels of that nature load ballast water straight from whatever water they're in to ensure the correct stability. go to another location and then disperse that ballast water with all the live creatures in it. A sailing vessel such as Ceiba does not use ballast water.
Okay, so I guess you have a fixed ballast then.
It is fixed, but it's primarily fixed. However, if we want to adjust it, we will use a solid material such as lead or something else, as opposed to water.
Mm-hmm. All right. Then from Raffaele, against which regulations has the vessel to comply with? Or
So Ceiba and Pitaya will both be non-passenger carrying vessels that are commercially registered and recognized by general IMO standards. They will have at least the minimum international standards for safety and communications. We have not chosen a class society yet, and we are in the process of doing that. We actually just hired a new lawyer, a maritime lawyer, to help us with that. But it will be essentially a commercial vessel, non-passenger carrying, which technically means you can carry up to 12 passengers, and hopefully flagged in Costa Rica.
Okay, yeah, that was my follow-up question. Yeah, that was just half of his question. Which kind of stability regulations need to be applied, and what kind of regulations? Well, yeah, for a safety plan and fire integrity plan. I guess.
So those will just be in accordance with international maritime standard for vessel of that size. I do not know off the top of my head to answer that, but yeah, the other aspect is that a lot of fire regulations are specific to the type of engine, or if you have like a galley, but like fire hazardous areas. So as Ceiba will not have a combustion engine, a lot of those regulations simply do not apply. Of course, we do need to adhere to firefighting standards and having training, STCW certifications, and other aspects like that. But as there is no combustion engine, a lot of those regulations just don't apply.
All right. And Kees van Roosmalen, I guess Dutch. From what I have seen, it appears that you are not using glue for the shipbuilding. Any special reason for this?
Correct, mostly. So we essentially do not use glue for any large structural element whatsoever. If we do need to do a graving piece, which is also commonly referred to as a Dutchman, we will use glue. So that would be if we're doing a small wood repair. So if there was a knot or a piece of rot or something or sapwood that needed to be replaced, and it was like a small piece, we typically will glue that in and use trunnels to peg it. But we do not use glue at any large scale whatsoever because the warping forces of the wood would greatly exceed the strength of the glue. And so we use physical fasteners such as bolts and trunnels to ensure that that is kept in place rather than glue.
Okay. And well, you mentioned this briefly at the end, but Pablo asks if you have a tree planting program to compensate for the wood. So
yes, we do have a tree planting program, and actually this year's season is just wrapped up. We have planted 3,000 native species in the area this year, and I believe that brings our total to 7,000 trees that we've planted so far. And we have cut down very approximately 400 trees for the construction of Ceiba and all the infrastructure of the shipyard. Ceiba is mandated to put 12,000 trees in the ground before her launch, and Pitaya will have a similar goal. All of our tree planting right now is done through our nonprofit shipyard association, Astillero Verde, which means green shipyard. And our shipyard association is an affiliate 501c3, and if you're from the US, this means that your donations would be eligible for tax deduction. So if anyone would like to learn more about supporting our tree planting or our nonprofit courses, please do let me know, because we really love our little nonprofit shipyard association.
yes, and maybe we can share somewhere your contact, and people can get in touch as well. From Kevin. He said, thank you very much. It was very interesting. Do you think it will be difficult to get crew for such sailing vessels? Well, you began like this, so.
So if you're referring to crew for vessels such as Ceiba and Pitaya, there's kind of two answers for that. Absolutely not. It will not be challenging to get crew for these vessels because people go crazy for tall ships, and let alone, or to add to that, people go crazy for working on a sailing cargo vessel. And on top of that, people go crazy for working on a vessel with an electric engine. And so the combination of these factors, just there, we already have applications for years previous. Like no way that will be a problem. What we do need to address, though, is as a hopefully Costa Rican flagged vessel, we will want and need to have a certain percentage of crew members being from Costa Rica. And very likely this will also be captains and mates will have to be Costa Rican. And there's no problem with that, except that they don't have a maritime culture of this type. Here, there's really almost, at least on the Pacific side where we are, there's like no sailing vessels. And so to ensure that as a Costa Rican vessel that we're investing in Costa Rican people, we need to work with existing maritime organizations and other sailing vessels to ensure that we have Costa Rican crew members that can actually legally and with experience run these vessels. And to that extent, we have already supported a couple Costa Rican people joining the Tres Hombres, and we hope to work soon with building a new small sail training vessel for Costa Rica. Shifting tack, if you want to ask about, for example, something like the Ecoliner, where would you find crew for this? That might be a little bit more challenging. There are two existing vessels, at least, that use Dynarig, which is the Maltese Falcon and the Black Pearl. And so there are vessels out there that if we wanted to invest in training now, they could do that. And those have been tried and proved technologies, but there would probably need to be a training phase implemented to ensure that the crew know exactly how to operate that vessel properly. But there would be a huge lineup for that as well, I'm positive.
And what about in the shipyard? How hard is it to find people to work? Because well, shipbuilding nowadays is a bit different.
Yes, that's true. So we do receive, again, applications every single day to work at the shipyard. However, we are really looking for skilled shipwrights and timber framers and boat builders, and that can be a challenge. We are very lucky to have already had people from around 27 different nations having come together, and we do maintain approximately 50% of our crew at all times is Costa Rican. So we are always, again, as I said, we are located in one of the poorest regions of the entire country, so it's extremely important that we are putting money in the hands of these people, you know, foreign investment turning into wages that go into the community. But we do need to be bringing in skilled labor from outside specifically for shipbuilding, and that can be a challenge. If anyone here is a wooden shipbuilder or timber framer, contact us.
Resumes, please. And Tamara asks again, are you going to use any anti-fouling, or what is your take on that?
Yeah, great question. So anti-fouling is typically a heavy metal biocide paint. So, and you know, many people can picture you paint the bottom of your boat red. That's actually copper and other heavy metals that sloughs off or comes off over time as the water kind of like takes it away. It's designed to go away and carry away the life that grows on it. This is extremely toxic, and what I like to do is, so you know that paint is toxic, we can picture that. What I like to get people to imagine is, would they have a big bucket of paint, and would you just dump that into the lake? Or would you ever just dump a whole bucket of paint right into the mangrove? That would probably feel pretty wrong, right? Because you know that you're dumping toxic chemicals right into a body of water, but that is what sloughing paint does. You just don't see it. So we are looking into that. We have some different options. One is a traditional option, looking into copper sheathing, I have worked on the Opal in northern Iceland, which we redid the copper sheathing. It's a lot of work, but it's very long lasting, and yeah, it's very beautiful and very efficient. It works. But we're also looking into new technologies. So there are biocide-free paints, even clear anti-fouling, which we need to learn a little bit more about. It's a paint. And as well, we are in communication, preliminary communication with a company that I believe it is Dutch, called Finsilate, which uses a really interesting technology of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like a fabric that has short hairs sticking out and nothing can stick to it. And Finsilate is inspired by sea urchins. So we haven't decided, but we're definitely looking into different options.
Great. Oh, super interesting. So Lamia is asking that if this is to be mass scaled, would this still be sustainable? Because in the past, quite a bit of forest has been depleted to sustain international trade.
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to underline the fact that we do not argue that all shipping should shift to wooden sailing vessels. That would not really be a reasonable replacement. Having said that, as with all forestry industries and timber industries, or almost all, previous forestry practices and most of what we do today is unsustainably managed. And so definitely, I mean, you can look across many, many places around the world that were more or less completely deforested due to wooden shipbuilding. That was due to not wooden shipbuilding, but unsustainable forestry management practices. And so while, again, I'm not arguing that we need to replace everything with wooden ships, it should be possible to have regenerative and sustainable forestry practices. Trees grow back, and what you build with them, such as a ship, such as Ceiba, should live longer than it takes to replace that tree. So right now, a lot of the trees we're using are approximately 50 to 70 years old, but with proper care and maintenance, a vessel such as Ceiba can easily operate for 100 years. And as a for-profit company that pays into tree planting every single year, we should actually have many more trees planted and growing than if Ceiba did not exist.
Oh, very good. Kes asks if both vessels will have no auxiliary power whatsoever. What's
So Ceiba and Pitaya both have, sorry, I didn't say this, both have electric and
will neither have auxiliary power, no auxiliary power.
both will have auxiliary power.
Okay.
Auxiliary power. Yeah, sorry, I did not mention that properly. So Ceiba right now is designed to have two 150 kilowatt electric engines with two propellers. And these propellers will be able to recharge when we are sailing. And so we will also have solar panels and be able to recharge when we're sailing and also plug in when we're in port to recharge these batteries. So especially if you're in a country, we're very lucky here in Costa Rica that it is 99% of the grid of the national power is renewably sourced. So even when Ceiba plugs in, it'll all be clean energy.
And let's keep with Kes. When are you looking at an eco-liner? Will this be wood too?
We are already considering vessels inspired by the eco-liner, and if you're interested, I encourage you to reach out to me. My email is Danielle@sailcargo.inc, sailcargo.inc, and they will not be made of wood. They will be made very likely out of steel, which is a compromise. So steel is something that we address as an issue, and we are navigating how we will communicate that in the future. And everything we do will be supported by studies and research and everything possible to offset that. But I consider it a stepping stone, a compromise. So I don't know what steel might be replaced with one day, but I hope that we can, because open iron mines are definitely not environmentally friendly.
Nico says that it's a super cool project that he will follow for many, many years. But in terms of the commercial utility of the ship, what are the performance predictions in terms of average passage time across the Atlantic or other legs?
So right now, the two routes we are looking at for Ceiba and Pitaya are going from more or less Latin America or Central America up to US and Canada on both coasts. We use a very conservative speed for our calculations, which support conservative financial estimates. So we use a speed of 4.2 knots average, although a vessel such as Ceiba with excellent conditions can easily go more than 12 knots. She is a true sailing vessel. So we hope that we can greatly exceed this average, especially with the use of the electric engine when needed. So compared to 24 knots maximum of a container ship, that's basically not comparable. We are waiting to see what the true average of the ship will be. Having said that, when those vessels get into port, it is very common for them to be waiting in line for up to or in excess of 2 weeks to unload their containers and then refuel, literally just anchored and waiting in line. And this can be everywhere from Vancouver to here in Costa Rica to Hamburg. They will just be waiting in line to use that infrastructure or to refuel. Ceiba will not have to do that. So that is partially because she is smaller, which takes away from her financial or commercial credibility. But honestly, I have my fingers crossed. I'm not sure if it'll be possible. I hope the end-to-end delivery will actually be faster.
And you talked you talked about facilities. Is there any special, besides, well, maybe a plug for the auxiliary engines, but are there any special facilities that Ceiba and Pitaya will need from port, or the whatever is there right now is okay?
Yeah, not really. What we need to ensure is that we have open and clear communication with the ports before we get there, because it is not a standard operation, simply because we're so much smaller than the vessels they typically handle. There are always docks that can accommodate smaller vessels, so they're going to be having tugboats, pilot vessels, port authority vessels, and so we may have to unload at a different dock, which requires planning and communication. Ceiba would be able to use certain types of cranes, not container cranes, for example, but if there's just dockside cranes, the ships will be able to work with them. As well, there will be cranes on board each ship. So we actually use the masts and the booms and potentially even specific cargo cranes on board to unload autonomously or independently. So we will not have to wait on that at all. And as well, Ceiba will not have to charge when she is in port. That we hope that will be possible, and it should very well be possible. But because there's the additional solar, there's no need to have to plug in.
Okay. Last maybe 3 questions. Okay.
Yeah.
What about launching? How is Ceiba going to be launched? That's always a fun thing for any vessel. So
my answer right now is a little bit sarcastic. This is what I've told our social media people to say, is that it's going to be a combination of pushing and pulling. No, but really, the real answer is that we don't know yet. We have looked at it with a company called Trimble, which is a geospatial scanning technology company, as well with Master Shipwright from Canada, and my co-founder Lynx and myself, and we've assessed that, and Naval Architects as well, and we've assessed that it is definitely possible, but we need to wait on the environmental permits to be approved to see what we want to actually construct. So do we do a very, very limited, simple launch way that's very minimal impact, or as we are negotiating the purchase of the yard right now, potentially we would look at installing a marine railway. So we are still waiting to find out the answer to that, but it's something we've looked into, and we know that it's entirely possible. If people are interested in that, they can also take a look. If you just Google or YouTube search Schooner Ruth launch Barbados. You'll see that was my first minute of captain ever on a vessel, was launching that ship, which was the largest ship ever built in the history of that country. And I wrote and implemented the launch of that with assistance from all the largest cranes and the, like, every industry was part of that, basically. So from the water police to the Coast Guard to the fire to everyone. So we pulled that off. So if you watch that, that might give you a bit more confidence.
Great, great. A bit of technicality, and what about cargo insurance? Kevin asks, are there difficulties there, or the cargo owners are carrying the risk themselves? How are you proposing to work?
So I don't have a specific answer other than the vessel itself will absolutely be completely insured, and we will very likely have our own insurance on the cargo, but it comes down to that the cargo shipper is encouraged to have their own insurance for the cargo as well.
Okay. So I guess your answers are already giving back something, because someone already asked if you're accepting job applications.
We are always accepting applications.
Okay, last one. It was noticed that there are no boat thrusters at the bow. So crosswinds on a sailing boat make for quick, interesting harbor maneuvers. What is the plan there?
Yeah, absolutely. You're correct. There are no bow thrusters planned for either vessel. And we did talk about this, and I'm familiar with some vessels that have bow thrusters. And one of the primary reasons we elected not to have them is that Ceiba and or Pitaya will not be calling on ports that often. So if you were to look at the beautiful schooner that I referenced earlier, Opal, which is in Iceland, they go in and out of port up to 3 times a day, so that they do whale watching. So that's 6 entries. So it's like going in, going out, going in, going out. And that's a tight little harbor. And so they chose to put in a bow thruster. And to me, that makes perfect sense. But if Ceiba is only going, or Pitaya is only going into port, in theory, 12 to 14 times a year, we would be using our own push boat or, small man overboard vessel to assist if needed in those times, because it takes up space, additional maintenance, it's cost, and it's simply not something you would be using while maneuvering across an ocean.
All right. Well, we could, I think at least I could stay here talking to you the whole evening. But unfortunately, we have to end this, at least for tonight. I'd like to thank you, Danielle, very much for your time. As KNVTS Amsterdam, we would like to offer you 1 year of membership with us. Yeah, and keep in touch with us, because yeah, we really appreciate your work. I'd like to also thank Lisa Ricci, who is our newest board member. She's providing us with support tonight, so we have a full email board today. Also, of course, thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully, we'll be able to see each other again. But for now, we are taking a summer break, yay! And we'll be back in September. But of course, in the meantime, if you'd like to stay up to date with our news and events, you can sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media. You can, of course, also become a member of KNVTS. Our website is knvts.nl. Last week, the Amsterdam board had its first in-person meeting. And I can tell you that we have great things in store for the second semester. So I would say it's a nice thing to become a part of. And for tonight, that's it. Danielle, again, thank you so much. and have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all so much for attending my presentation. Thank you.